You're listening to the Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
All right, hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. And this show is coming to you live from Las Vegas. So I'm at an industry conference. It's pretty interesting. Funny, I'm so contrarian. I'm realizing how contrarian I am. So it's one of the things that I talk about with our clients is in a conversation. If you've worked with me, you've heard me say this to you. Is in one of my talks, I show a picture of a golfer, and I say, well, let's say I've got two things to you. Let's say you have the opportunity to go play in the Masters, golf's most prestigious event, and I've got two things to give you, but you can only have one. I could give you the clubs, let's say Tiger's clubs, or the clubs of being the best players of the tour, or I can touch you on the shoulder and I can give you their swing. Which one would you rather have? And so most people say that they think about it for a second, they go to swing. Exactly, right? And so most people in golf, they're always looking for a better driver, a better club if you play golf. But let's bring that back to the financial world. And I say, well, listen, most companies are club manufacturers. Like they make financial products. So I'm here at this event and I'm making on my notes. Okay, most of the events are sponsored by the club manufacturers, the money managers, and people that do financial software and people that provide service. I had an interesting actually talk on trust. So it was a lot of that kind of stuff. And I realized I really don't, even though I had economists that spoke, I disagreed with because it's all rosy. The market's going to be great. And the coronavirus is a blip, but to me, it was all fiction because I guess I have a more negative outlook on the markets once you understand really what's driving them, which is monetary policy. I don't think there's just profit. So anyway, so that's the club. So when people say, they're talking about, fund X or this fund group, or when people at, this, should I get? So people say, well, look, Curtis, what should I be investing in? And what should I invest in? So most people ask club questions. Should I get a 15-year mortgage or a 30? Should I get, term or permanent, or, index universal life versus whole life? Or, those are more topical, I want a credit repair. These are all products, and you need products to play. And most people, typical financial people, are club salespeople. Okay. And there were some really brilliant holistic planners here. I met one and she was awesome. But one of the things I realized is that I tell our clients, I'm the swing coach. So we offer clubs, insurance to club, disability, mutual funds or a club. I don't do that stuff anymore. So if you need that, don't call me because I don't think that works because the overriding thought, I was talking to a friend of mine and kind of mentor. He says that, now I'm really trying to draw and teach all the separation between what I call the accumulation theory versus velocity. And so it really comes down to that because most financial advice, you got to look at where the advice is coming from and what is their agenda, right? And so in the financial world, they really teach is two theories. So when you're hearing the accumulation theory, you're being told things like buying, holding, dollar cost averaging, getting out of debt. These are the popular things that you see on TV and baby steps and that kind of stuff. They work to a point, but they don't work long range. See that I'm stepping on a lot of toes. This year I'm gonna step on a lot of toes because what happens is you have to break it down and don't take Curtis's word for it because it's your money, but you've got to figure out what you want, what you believe in. You've got to look at what's going, how does this work? That's why always people say, what do you do? I'm more of a financial coach and financial educator. And the goal is to teach people how money works, right? And what are the rules of money? Because it's really hard to win a game you don't know the rules. And so most people either play by the wrong rules or don't know the rules at all. So they're focused on clubs, but it's really the swing. I was talking to my little niece today, and I said, "Well, she was like, oh, Curtis, I want to invest." I was like, "You don't need to invest. We're going to roll out a program, 5 principles of personal finance, and which is really based on the other side, velocity, right? And so I said, well, are you saving? Oh no, I can't save. So she's got her first little job. I said, well, you have to save. I didn't. You got to save. I want you to save. And here's what you got to do. Here are your my five principles. So I ran them off to her. You got to save 50% of your income. And I gave her a specific mechanism how to do that. Right. So I'm gonna teach her a system of cash flow management that we teach because I don't like budgeting. Budgeting is scarcity focused and looking back at history, and you just need to use your cash flow management as a planning tool, not as a tracking tool. And so you need to forecast. So, we talked about that. I said, well, you got to have, proper protection. You have, so I gave her some homework. So I'm going to look at all her stuff and kind of make sure that she's, playing defense out. From what she told me, I think she's overpaying for her not home insurance, health insurance. And, she's not sick, so, people want low deductibles. Listen, 80% of claims are doctor's visits and prescriptions, right? So you can have a $5,000 deductible. The odds are you're not going to get sick. You're not going to use it, get a health savings. But you got to review that stuff because what you're doing is you're overspending. And, you have to be efficient. There's more opportunity in minimizing your losses than it is to trying to pick winning investments. But everybody's trying to pick winning investments. I told her, principle 3 is full replacement of assets at death. She doesn't have any kids, so I'm not going to harp on that too much. But principle 4 is I want, 3 months and 6 months and 12 months of cash. For us, that most of that's going to be in the private reserve account or your family banking system. But you have to save. See, because most people don't have any savings. They feel like they haven't had to they have to hit a home run. And so you're out looking at schemes to make quick money and, chasing rates of return. That's not how the game works. Okay. And that's not what institutions do. That's not what rich people do. And so I said, so you got to save money. So I don't even, don't even talk to me about investing. So you have like 3 to 6 months of cash. I don't even want you to put money in 401k. Okay. You need money where it's liquid. You use it and you can get control. Hear me, guys. And then principle 5 is you got to learn how to create velocity. Money's got to move. We're taught to put money in boxes and leave it on the shelf. And I was giving somebody an example of philosophy. So my family was in the tavern business, right? And so this makes sense. You have to go buy hosts, if you're at a bar or you're in a grocery store, same concept, right? So you got to go get stuff. You have to have, bottles on the shelf. So when people come in, you can make them drinks in the neighborhood bar. So it's not all these fancy drinks. It's shot in glass, rum and Coke, Magnum and water. That brown liquor, the old folks, right? It's funny how this stuff. So there's 25.4 ounces in the bottle, right? And so let's say Bacardi rum I've been out of the business for about 10 years, but let's say it's $13 a bottle. And so let's say we charge $3 a shot. So that's, what's that, $75 on a bottle, right? And so you have to make those bottles. So when, we sell a bottle, I should have $75. That wasn't the case because now you got to look for people stealing your money. It's a whole other story, one for me, one for you. Let's pour an extra drink so you can get better tips. And so you're not getting all of your money, but you got to make the most out of these little bottles. But, you can't just leave. And so what happens is you sell it, the bottle's gone, and that also not all your money. You've got to go get another bottle. See, so you have to turn money over, right? And so that's called creating velocity. So you're taught to leave money in account for 30 years and hope, some fund manager is really brilliant. And that, to me, that's a bad strategy. So you've got to understand, what are the rules of the bank? See, the institutions, here are the rules that guide financial institutions. They want us to give them our money. They want us to give them our money on a regular basis. They want us to give them our money on a regular basis, and they want to keep our money for as long as possible. And they want us to give them our money on a regular basis, keep it as long as possible, and give us back as little as possible. And so examine the financial strategies you're currently using and compare them to these 4 basic rules, okay? And so that's critical. So you got to understand, I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm just saying it just is, all right? So now what happens is, what are your rules? You've got to move money in and out of assets. So when we talk about, the principles of prosperity, move is one of them, right? And so So I'm starting to go through that with people. So I'm at this event here, and it's all about accumulation. I mean, everything is about accumulation. And so to me, you can't accumulate money. So I take people through exercise called Retirement Ready or Not. And it's based on accumulation, how much you need to be saving. So I need you to save 15, 20% of your income, but saving is not going to get you there. That's just going to give you some money so you have money to invest. Invest in what? What are the four asset classes? Business, real estate, paper assets, and commodities. And through my study, most people don't accumulate their way to financial success. I've scarcely met anybody that's made multimillionaire through maxing out their 401k. Unless you're like a really super high paid executive or something like that. Most of them build businesses, and they store their wealth. They may store it in equities. That's what, it's funny because when I look at these guys, these big, I've got X amount of assets under management. It's all about accumulation. In the financial world, it's all about accumulation assets under management. They never talk about cash flow. How much cash flow is that generating for the client? I was in this meeting and this girl was talking about the funds, and the young girl that was trading, she was like, yeah, our bond fund is up 400 basis points in the last 2 weeks over its peers. So what? I mean, how does that help you? How does that help? Can you spend that? Okay. I was like, I'm sitting there going, what are you talking about? So the title of the show, and I'm getting into it, is why I think typical thinking fails to reach its goals. And so if you stay to the end, or if you look in the show notes, I'll give you a link where you can get this white paper that I'm kind of read out to you with my own commentary. But I think that that's powerful. You got to enlist a new thought process. So I want to challenge you to really think, because traditional planning doesn't work because financial planning is not a science. See, if it was a science, no one would lose money. And so it's really more important to use common sense and a logical approach to, secure your financial future. And even then it's hard, right? And so one of the things that I talk about is the accumulation theory. So traditional thinking is mired in thought that accumulation and rates of return are the two factors that determine future success, right? And on the surface they seem important, but it's far more important to really understand how money works, and understand the buying power of a dollar, and then you can more effectively and efficiently use your money. And so here is, now, so let's talk about accumulation. So accumulation is you need to accumulate money. And so typical advice will have you establish how many dollars you need in the future to secure your financial success. But the problem is, reaching accumulation goals are seldom ever achieved. And, it's not your fault. It's actually not even the fault of the planner, because who's teaching them? Financial institutions are teaching them. But think about this. See, this is where I'm talking about you got to understand how money works. And you don't really get this information in personal finance. So one, we live in a world of flexible currency. And our currency is created by the Federal Reserve and distributed by the government. So the dollar in its creation has no real value. Okay. That means it's not backed by silver or gold that would give it value. Flexible currency it automatically creates inflation, and because you have to print more of it. Okay. And every time you take a bank loan, you're just creating new money, or they create new money out of thin air that didn't exist. So, inflation has used to mean an increase in the money supply, right? That's inflation. And so an increase in the money supply means you have more dollars chasing the same goods. So it takes more of those dollars. And so you perceive that as prices going up, but that's really the value of your dollar going down, the purchasing power going down. And so, because here's the thing, if our currency had, like it used to have, we have, sound money. If it had any value from the start, it would be very little, if any, inflation. That, we had a couple hundred years, we didn't hardly have any inflation, right? So it's hard to nail down the buying power of flexible currency at any time in the future. So simply planning to reach an accumulation level, you see these commercials, what's your number? You need X amount of dollars. Well, how can you do that? Okay. And so the accumulation factors offer some guarantees because you can't really say you can't say guarantee here at this event, right? In the securities world. But here's the first guarantee I'll give you with that. If you're focused on maxing out your 401k and your advisor's telling you this and that, here's a guarantee one. First, in trying to accumulate money and make your money grow, you're the only one whose money's at risk. And the second is that your growth will probably be taxed, even if it's in a qualified plan. See, qualified plans do two things. They defer taxes, right? And the more accurate word I always tell people is postpone. So you're postponing taxes. They don't save money taxes. Taxes still won't get paid. And so you'll have more on the back end. So you're going to get taxed more. And then, the money comes out as ordinary income, which is the highest tax. So the question you have to ask yourself, well, what will my taxes be when I retire? Some people, your advisor will tell you, well, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. No, you're not. Okay. Unless you're poor. Well, if you're poor, you're in a lower tax bracket. So if you're planning on being poor and your advice is for you to be poor, so let me understand. You're going to defer your life in an account in money that you can't touch or 529 plans. You've got currency that the longer you hold it, the less it buys. If you're focused on accumulation, the thought of more money is so it's what I mean. You have to look at all that stuff. So the buying power, you've got risk in the marketplace, you've got taxes, and so these are some of the things that are going against your money. And so, in the accumulation factor, the central thought is that the more money you have, the better it is. But with all the hurdles reaching fulfillment of this type of thinking, it's like a basketball player. This sounds like Houston, right? A basketball coach telling his players, hey, they better go out and score 200 points a game because they don't have any defense. You don't play any defense. You're trying to outscore everybody. And so what happens is we're trying to do the same thing with our money. We're trying to go out there and, score 200 points because you don't have any defense against the challenges that you're facing. Okay. So if you're taking notes, right? So it's theory, the accumulation theory it's focusing on accumulation, which is what typical advice is. Here's another one. Okay. So rates of return. And so another reason why, typical thinking falls short of its goals is the rate of return factor. So people, we believe that you can grow your money at a certain rate and it will all be well in the future. Rates of return are used by planners as a barometer of how you're doing well. Like the girl told you, oh, we're up, for 200 basis points, 400 basis points in 2 weeks. Okay. So what? Okay. And they also use past performance. Oh, I love this. Okay. So they use past performance of rates of return as if there was some indication of the future. And although past performance could be some indication of stability, management, and success, it really offers a glimmer of possible performance in the future. When you buy an investment, your performance history starts that day, not 10 years ago. So I don't care what it did, what your benchmarks are, what your average. I do it to the video on averages versus actual. And so rates of return are a performance of measurement, but the reality is that you can't spend rates of return and you can only spend money, right? And so if you're focused on accumulation and you need the money, what do you have to do? Sell your shares. So rates of return are misleading. Everyone looks that for a positive rate of return, that really creates a false sense of security. So you'll see people in the news talking about the wealth effect, so when you're in the Fed prints money, you see the stock market goes up. Because we don't have inflation. The market going up, real estate going up, that's where the inflation is manifesting itself. It's driving up asset prices. Okay. And so most of you are speculating. But how do you make money? And so that's the thing. So, so if you're thinking about that, you're looking at rates of return as your barometer when you focus on accumulation theory. And so you got to think about that. What about taxation? And so, here's the thing. So now if you've got $100,000 and let's say this is how people show this. They'll say, well, if you can get 6% of your money will double every 12 years. So that means you got 100, then you got 2, then you've got 2 doubles to 4, your 4 doubles to 8. Well, if this is not in, let's say, retirement plans, well, guess what? Compounds are right along with that. Your fees compound, one half a basis point, 1%, 2% are compounding. So now you got 1% on 100, 1% on 200,000, and so that is growing. And then also you have to pay taxes on that money, right? And so it's tough. So government policy is flexible, right? And so that's another moving target. Okay. And so how do you factor in that? So you see, it's so many moving targets. You don't know, you can't know if markets are going to go up or down. You've got taxation, you've got the purchasing power of the dollar moving. And so there's so many things. And right, we talk about human factor is that, no amount of planning will ever prevent dumb luck, right? And so many people are involved in what I call poverty planning. See, poverty planning takes no time, no money, and the results are pretty predictable. And so the reason people are stuck in this mode, they have little or no successful plan. They're not knowledgeable and they're embarrassed to discuss their situation with anyone, right? Most people are like just in our work people, they're in denial. They don't want to look at it, they don't want to open their statements up. And consistency of because even if you do investing, what most people do is they invest for the rear view mirror. So markets go down, they sell them. So now they bought it too high, they sell it when it's low. Now you've locked in a real loss. And you because you're taught buy and hold, you're in it for the long haul. But that's not what institutions do, right? They focus on, so I'm telling you to buy and hold, dollar cost average, get out of debt, buy term, invest the difference. In corporate finance courses, or if you just listen to the words of rich people, I tell our clients is that listen what you hear. You hear they focus on cash flow. So the true value of an asset is generates cash flow. So you live on cash flow. So you have to focus on buying things that send you a check every month. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have um you got less than 20,000, what you need to invest in is you and learning how to make money. If you listen to Chris Miles' show, the interview I did with Chris, we talk about that a lot of just you got to find ways to create value in the marketplace where people give you money. That's what you've got to learn how to do. That sounds too much like work. So people are like, well, what do regular people do? That because that's how it works. It's like, well, what if they don't want to do that? Then, like if that scares you and you don't want to do that, I always tell people don't call Curtis because that is you've got to be able to take responsibility for your life. And so, one of the things that when you talk about investing, what you have to do is you've got to find something. I would say you got to sell something. You got to sell your something or somebody else's something, but you have to find something to become expert at that you know how to do. So, for example, we did a webinar last week. Because I really, y'all know I really love the Smart Real Estate Coach, and they're buying real estate on terms. I like turnkeys, but their thing is all about look a niche market, but it's really about learning a skill, learning how to negotiate, learning how to help people solve problems is really what that course is about. And from that, you can now, by helping people solve their problem, they average $75,000 per deal. So I don't care. And so most people are too impatient. See, what if it took you a year to do your first deal, but you made 50,000, and you just were part time, you did one of those a year. And in addition to your job, see now you're making money. Now you've got some money to do some things. And that's what you got to do. You got to have the patience to learn something new. That is your best investment. And so you've got to have it. People call me, what do you think about the course? I think it's great. The question I have is you. Will you do the work? Will you get into the course? Will you take action? Because most people don't. And that's the reality of it. So you just work, you'll max out your plan, and you'll realize, that it's like if you call me, I'll show you the numbers. You cannot save enough money. You can't invest enough money in equities. And what I find is that when I talk to these people about their clients, they're successful business owners, they're dentists, they're people that are making a lot of money. And so They just are making a lot of money, and they're teaching them to give it to them and hope the markets go up. I mean, one event I was where's my notes at? I was the first thing I took note of. I was at one of these workshops, and so one of the talks was that we think the market will do well as long as consumer demand stays up. Really, that to me is very telling because that is again that's steeped in what I call this Keynesian thinking that consumption drives the economy. And so really you have to save, you've got to employ capital because eventually if you're just moving money around, artificial money, that's the problem. I mean, at some point that runs out. So you've got to learn how to create value in the marketplace. Security is the ability to produce. So, traditional planning doesn't work because it's focused on accumulation. So you just can't accumulate. So I'm gonna, look at the show notes. I'm gonna attach this article and just review it. Do your homework. We're gonna do some stuff, and we're actually working on a course. We're gonna, really break this down, but it just hit me today because it was on my heart because I was like, wow, everybody's here is what I call drank the Kool-Aid. And I think that what you have to do is I always tell people my goal is to, like, if I do a talk, I said my goal is to when I get finished talking, my goal is for you to have more questions than you have answers. But in my mind, that's a good thing because you're starting to think as opposed to just buying, what people tell you to think. I always tell people I want you to have enough knowledge to separate facts from by somebody's sales pitch. So everybody's got their biases. Most people, most typical advice is around, what do we say? It's four asset classes: business, real estate, paper, and commodities. Most people, when they think of investing, they just think of paper. But now you got to go back to, okay, so that's based on the accumulation factor. That's based on the rate of return factor, and all of these things are inherently unstable. So you've got to ask yourself, well, what should I be doing? And I don't know, it's your money, but I think you need to save. I think that you've got to learn some stuff because security is the ability to produce. So you're going to think about this. If you bought a case of soda, one of the things I'll tell kids on, I'm going to end with this, is that, I'm a big Jim Rohn fan, as you know, and one of the things that I teach them is that profits is better than wages. Wages make you a living, profits make you a fortune. So what's a profit? So you sell in Philly. I tell people, you see the people that are selling, I used to say kids, but now it's people selling water on the street, especially during the summer. And water, what's a case of, or at basketball courts, friends of mine do that. They'll sell water, they'll have Gatorade or something. So Gatorade for $2, water for $1. Well, what's the case of water cost? $4, right? And I mean, a case 24. I want to exercise with the kids that says, well, if you sell all 24, that's $24. But realize this: if you sold 8 at $1, that's $8. You had $4, so that you've just doubled your money. That's 100% return, right? And so people say, "Well, we made $4," but But look at the rate of return. So how do you do that? What is your variation of that? Got clients that sell essential oils. I said, well, how much does your stuff costs wholesale? So if it costs, you can bottle this up and then the cost is $2, you can sell it for $10 or $15 a bottle. That's better than a mutual fund any day of the week. So you have to learn how to do that kind of stuff. You've got to, you've all got gifts and stuff that you can do or learn how to do, and then everybody's got some expertise in there, and if you don't, that's the problem. That's why you don't make any money, because you don't have any skills. So you have to work on your skills. You don't need to be lobbying for $15 an hour to work at McDonald's. You need to figure out how to make more damn money. How do you do that? Walter Williams says, listen, you got to please your fellow man, and think of your dollars as certificates of performance, right? So if you don't have any money, you have not been pleasing your fellow man. You have not been performing well, which is why you don't have any money to exchange for goods and services. If you'll listen to my show, that doesn't piss them off. But, that's how the world works. So, folks, go out there. I want you to think. I want you to understand the money game. You got to get back. You got to read a book a month on money. I'll tell you, what am I reading right now? I would go back to one of the things that when you get into velocity, if you go back to the Kiyosaki book, Who Took My Money? And they really break down the velocity versus what I'm talking about really clearly. So I've been kind of teaching that in presentations. And so I would get into that. And what's the other ones? Is Who Took My Money and Unfair Advantage are that really break down the formula that investors use. And it's literally 180 degrees from typical advice. So we're going to go, I have a case study of, I'm trying to see if I want to, I don't know if I can put it on a webinar, but I was looking at a video with Dave Ramsey talking about asking, somebody called and asked if I have $90,000, should I pay on the mortgage? So I was like, no, you shouldn't do that. And he proceeded to walk him through his process. So what I did was I'm putting this in a newsletter. So go and download text cash flow #ebook to 26786 for financial planning has failed. But this will send you the book, but also put you on our newsletter list. And what we're trying to do is to really break down, I'm going to really this year attack that accumulation theory, because I think that is hurting people, because people don't really understand. They're upset, but you don't understand, we have a flexible money supply. So the culprit at the center of all this is our money. And so, the first chapter in Rich Dad Poor Dad is rich people don't work for money. They don't, which means they don't work for earned income, because if money is not real, why are you working for it? Why are you going into debts in the bondage to work for something that's not real? Let's just think about that for a second. Okay. So anyway, this is my philosophical rantings at 6 a.m. in the morning in Vegas, getting ready for my last day of this conference. But hey, I want you to go out there, have a great week. Listen up for the Practical Wealth Show. If you like this, we're really starting the Practical Wealth Club. We're going to roll out a membership site where, what I find is that a lot of people, after we talk, a lot of times when I do these interviews, they have more to say. So we're going to do in some private meetings where I want to do some live Q&As. I want you to be able to interact a little bit more with the people, because there's just a lot of brilliant stuff. And I always tell you guys, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. You just got to learn them and pick your way or a couple of ways, and that is how you will create velocity, or what I call a cash machine. You have to start out with something. You've got to find a cash machine is something you can start for like under $500 where you can make some money, and that will jumpstart your money. You've got to learn how to earn. So I'm going to keep kind of harping on that, and go out there, have fun, have a great week. Praise God.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.